You're listening to Community Heroes podcast featuring people sharing about their stories with their disabilities. And now for your hosts, Brandon and Pate.
And we're back with another episode of Community Heroes Table Talk. And today's special guest is Miss Maysoon. How are you doing today, Maysoon?
I'm doing as good as anyone can do in a deadly pandemic that's had me trapped in my house for about 10 months.
Very true, very true. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from?
Sure. My name is Maysoon. I'm a comedian, author, and disability advocate, born and raised in the great state of New Jersey. In the Oppression Olympics, I'd win a gold medal. I'm Palestinian, I'm Muslim, I'm disabled, I'm a woman of color, I'm divorced, and as I mentioned, I live in Jersey. So if you don't feel better about yourself, maybe you should. And want to give an audio description to our friends out there who maybe can't see. I look like the Lost Kardashian. I have long black hair. I'm wearing inappropriately sparkly red lipstick. I have cinnamon skin. I'm sitting in front of an evil eye that's protecting me from all the jelly bellies that want to jinx me. And also in front of a shelf full of books I have never read, but people gave them to me for free, so I want to promote them. So buy those books.
Can you tell us a little bit about your disability, how you were diagnosed, and
Yeah, so I was born on Labor Day many moons ago, and the doctor who delivered me was drunk, and my mom needed an emergency C-section because I came out fist first, ready to fight the power. And he panicked and he cut her 6 times, and I lost oxygen at birth. That loss of oxygen damaged my brain, so I am brain damaged, which gets a really bad rap. It's not that bad. And as a result, I have something called cerebral palsy. Cerebral palsy manifests itself differently in everyone. Some of us are nonverbal, some of us are wheelchair users. In my case, I shake all the time, so I'm kind of like Muhammad Ali at the end of his life. And yeah, that's all I can tell you about CP. And I guess I was diagnosed like when I was like a baby. Because I've always had CP. I've always known that I have CP. It was not.
So what's it like to have cerebral palsy and work in comedy?
I became a comedian because of my cerebral palsy, because my dream in life was to be an actor. I wanted to be on the daytime soap opera General Hospital. I went to Arizona State University, Sun Devil, Forks Up, to study theater. And when I graduated and I started auditioning, I realized that people on television did not look like me. So there were no disabled people on TV. And in the seldom time I did see a disabled person on TV, it was usually a white boy and a wheelchair user. And it wasn't an ethnic woman. It definitely wasn't a fluffy woman. So where I did see myself was in the world of stand-up comedy, specifically Richard Pryor, the OG shaking comic of color. So I decided to become a comedian, and I went to Caroline's Comedy Club on Broadway. I signed up for a class. It was a 6-week class. The final day of class was a show at Caroline's Comedy Club. I killed it. And I literally became a professional comedian that night. So like comics are supposed to really struggle and like pay their dues. By my 3rd show, I was a paid comic. By my 3rd year of doing stand-up, I was doing a Live Nation tour and doing like 1,000-seat theaters. So I've been really—
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Tell us about your most famous segment, 99 Problems, but CP isn't one.
Yeah, I'm going to continue on what I was talking about, though, because I think it's really important. And the idea is that comedy is the land. It's like the island of misfit toys. So if you're different, comedy is a really great place for you to be. And the goal was to become a comedian. And then, like other comics, like Ellen or Mimi from the Drew Carey Show or Rosie O'Donnell or Richard Pryor, who was like a huge film star, I would channel that comedy into being on television. And it actually worked out because 20 years later, I got cast on General Hospital. So my plan worked. It just took 2 decades. 99 Problems with Palsy is just one is my TED Talk. And apparently TED Talks are this really famous thing. And when I was asked to do a TED Talk, my first question was, how much are you going to pay me? Because I don't work unless I'm being paid. Like, I can't remember who got me to do what I'm doing right now, but it was like someone special that I said yes, because otherwise you can't get me to do nothing for free. Nothing. Like, people pay me to brush my teeth. I won't do anything for free. So they invited me to the TED Talk and they told me that they don't pay. And I wasn't excited about it at all. And then my agent was like, oh my God, the gift bag is unbelievable. You have to do it. So I went to my TED Talk, super low expectations, not really prepared, not really understanding like what a big deal it was. I just did it like I did all of my comedy routines in my life, like I didn't overhype it, and then it went viral. And it's really interesting because I would get interviewed on talk shows and they'd be like, so it all started with a TED Talk, and I'm like, so it all started a decade earlier when I was doing stand-up and Live Nation tours. And what was great about the TED Talk was it was translated into 47 different languages. So I got to meet the global disability community through that TED Talk. I got to learn about the fact that I was extremely privileged. So, you know, when I joke about the Oppression Olympics, people don't think of a disabled woman of color as being privileged. But I am privileged because I have walking privilege, which means I have access to places that wheelchair users don't. I have verbal privilege, which is a privilege that nonverbal people simply do not have. I have a different privilege than a Black male wheelchair user does. I'm safer in American society than my Black disabled counterparts. And I also was blessed and lucky to be born to 2 parents who did not abuse me or try to kill me. There's actually a day of mourning for disabled people who are killed by their parents and caretakers in the United States of America. So when the TED Talk exposed me to the disabled community, that's how I became a disability advocate. Before then, I wasn't doing disability advocacy. I was a disabled comic, but I was really, really fighting against the hatred and bigotry against Arabs and Muslims post 9/11 in America. That was like my cause, what I was doing. And I really didn't discover how much violence and discrimination the disability community faced until that TED Talk.
That's absolutely true. I was just about to ask you about your work as a disability advocate. Like, what kind of work have you done? What kind of information have you given to others that support your advocacy?
I guess I'm not doing great because the main drive of my work is to stop non-disabled actors from playing disabled on screen. I believe that disability, much like race, especially visible disability, because of course there's visible disabilities like mine, and then there's invisible disabilities like chronic pain, fibromyalgia, mental health issues. And sometimes I hear people call it visible disability versus invisible disability. That's what I go with, because all disabilities are equal. All disabilities are physical. Mine just happens to be visible. And I think that when you play visible disability on screen, it's cartoonish, inauthentic, and offensive. And it also removes the ability of talented disabled actors to play those roles. We are 20% of the population. We are only 2% of the images you see on TV. Of those 2%, 95% are played by non-disabled actors. 19% only are women. zero LGBTQ up until, God bless him, Ryan O'Connell on Special broke the mold and finally got us an LGBTQ character, followed by the, amazing Ryan J. Haddad on The Politician. So we're making very small advances, but like just today, the Golden Globes announced their awards. And one of the nominees was a movie called Music by Sia, where an autistic character is played by a non-autistic actor, where extremely, extremely dangerous practices like ABA are shown as being a positive thing. And what I'm trying to do is not only have disabled actors play those roles, but have disabled people tell our own stories. Because when we don't get to tell our own stories, we're either used as inspiration, which is like, oh my God, look at how brave that disabled girl is. She didn't tie rocks to her legs and drown herself. If I was disabled, I would kill myself. Bravo, bravo. Or we get like the storyline where it's like, we're the brave disabled person who beat all the odds and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro with our teeth. So like we either have to be like super cripples or we have to be charity cases. And what I'm trying to do is normalize disability, whatever normal means, and have it be like, if you're in a room and nobody in that room identifies as disabled, whether it's a boardroom, an audition, a film set, then you're doing it wrong. Because again, we're 20% of the population, so we need to be included in everything. The past 4 years, my advocacy became survival, because when the Orange Menace, who shall not be named, Father Venke, was president, disabled people were really under siege. So I was fighting for everything from education rights for students who were being stripped of protections by Betsy DeVos to healthcare, which was under siege the entire 4 years. And a very little known stat, in fact, that is terrifying, is that 50% of all Americans killed by law enforcement are disabled. 50%. So a big part of my advocacy is working hand in hand with movements like Black Lives Matter to put an end to the murder of disabled people who are disproportionately Black, brown, and indigenous by law enforcement.
Tell us about how cerebral palsy affects your day-to-day life.
It's exhausting. So like I shake all the time and I tell people, imagine you wake up in the morning and you just do this for 24 hours. So like I'm constantly in pain, which is fine. I've just kind of learned how to live with it, but I'm constantly in pain. I shake all the time. And the most frustrating part of my cerebral palsy for me is that I'm a prolific writer. I write jokes, I write screenplays, I write soap operas, I write Muslim Christmas movies for Lifetime, I write. And I have to dictate everything I write to a typist because I'm palsy and I can't type. And the dictation doesn't understand me like Siri and Dragon. They don't understand me because I'm super slurry. So like if you auto caption me, I'll be like, hi, my name is Maysoon, and auto caption, they'll be like, yo, I'm a baboon. And so like it doesn't work for me except to dictate to a human being. And it's so frustrating because I have these amazing ideas and I just want to write them down, and I'm tied to not only having to use a typist, but also pay a typist. So whenever I want to create something, there's a price tag. And being disabled in and of itself is so expensive that, you know, often I wish I had the resources to create on a larger scale, but I just can't afford it. And so that's really frustrating. To me, I'm a lucky disabled person. I've talked to a lot of disabled people that say like dating is really hard. And they did a poll in America, and people were like, 80% of Americans won't date a disabled person. And I guess the other 20% are disabled. So like we're in trouble with the dating. But I never had a problem with that. So I can't be like, it's really hard to find a partner. People think I'm a burden. As I mentioned, I shake, I look like the Lost Kardashian, I'm pretty desirable. It's been fine. So that hasn't really been a challenge. And just discrimination, the way that people dehumanize me, the fact that when I walk into an audition, I limp into an audition, people immediately dismiss me. So if you take a show like The View's been on television for 22 years. They've never had a visibly disabled co-host. There are no visibly disabled anchors on GMA, the Today Show, CBS This Morning. My career is in entertainment. And I have to work 30 times harder than any other actress to even get through the door. And then I can't get people to take that chance of like, yeah, she could play a lawyer, she could play a teacher, she could play a romantic interest. One of the girls on Sex and the City could have been a wheelchair user. Like, they don't think of a character as being played by a disabled person unless it's written that way. And so I faced so much discrimination in my career. And just like every other woman, I faced a lot of threats and violence and bullying on social media. There's a very strange reaction by white privileged men to being rejected by a disabled brown woman. So the fact that I'm brown, an Arab and a Muslim of a certain age, I'm already threatening and discriminated against because I really can't talk about my disability by itself. It intersects with who I am gender-wise, with who I am ethnically, with who I am religiously. And white privileged men online find it really, really, really offensive for someone they think is inferior to reject them. And because I'm disabled, it kind of heightens the violence and the verbal threats that I get from people online who expect me to just, be like, of course, random guy in my DMs, of course I want to marry you. Like, why would I say no to this wonderful offer? And so it's really interesting to see the visceral hate and violence you get when you say no to people who think they are superior to you. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. What advice would you give to our viewers and our supporters who want to go into disability advocacy, or they have questions about cerebral palsy? What advice would you give them?
Okay, if you're disabled, that doesn't mean that you can talk about all disability. Disability is not a monolith. So I, as a woman with cerebral palsy, know very little about what it's like to be a deaf Indigenous man, or to be, a transgender wheelchair user. It's really important that you understand that the community is not a monolith, and that when you advocate for equality for all, not just for you. So if you're a wheelchair user, a ramp is not enough. You also have to fight for blind people to have equality. So insist on audio descriptions. You have to make sure that deaf people are included. So you have, captions. You, as I said earlier in the conversation, constantly being aware of what our privilege is and how we can lift up and amplify the voices who aren't privileged. So like, I'm really mad that Sia made a movie about autism not using an autistic actor. If I have a big news organization reach out to me and say, we'd like you to comment, I'm going to kick it to an actually autistic person. And I think a really big part of advocacy is amplifying other voices, not feeling like I have to take every opportunity. If I don't take this opportunity, more opportunities don't come. I think it's really important to kick it to someone who lives that experience, amplify someone who lives that experience if you're asked to comment on something that's not your own experience. And learn about it, right? Like, I'm an old lady, you know. I'm far beyond 33, but happily not at 50. But when I see these youngins on Twitter being like, I just invented disability advocacy, I'm like, go to your history books, learn about the ADA movement, learn about the trailblazers, learn about people who were, you know, disabled and working for disability rights from the time that they were enslaved in this country. Learn about your history. Don't think that like you're the first person to think of this thing. You're the first person to do this. I always say no one's ever first. Somebody else did it, you just don't know it. So never assume, and learn about your history, know what you're talking about, and be very careful of organizations that are constantly raising money but don't seem to actually interact with disabled people.
That is very true. I agree completely. How can our viewers and followers get in contact with you? And if they want to speak with you themselves, how would they get in contact with you?
So I never, ever, ever, ever sleep. I only sleep 3 hours a night. This is bad and unhealthy. And it's like on commercials when they say, don't try this at home. Don't try this at home. Since the age of 5, I've only slept 3 hours from 3:30 a.m. to 6:30 a.m., no matter what time zone I'm in. So you could almost always find me on Twitter. I'm a compulsive tweeter. I'm there all the time. But if you want something that's more in depth than Twitter, you can go to my website, Maysoon.com, which is spelled just like the month of May is coming soon. Maysoon.com, Maysoon.com. And you can email me directly from there. The emails come to me. I'm not going to instantly answer you, but I will answer in a week or two unless you're a Saudi dude asking me to become your wife, who I don't know, but they email me a lot. I get 4 or 5 proposals a day. And, and also, if you go to my website, you can see Beyonce the Cat's page. And Beyonce the Cat is my fur baby. And she has her own page on my website of beautiful Beyonce the Cat shots. So you can check.
Michael, do you have any questions for Miss Maysoon?
Oh yeah, that was a few things, just a small one. I would just wanted to, how honorable it was to speak with you, because you're very in tune about the layers of disabilities, not just about specifically your own. You were talking about how other people have different variables, and you know about the privilege of your own as well as others. So you embrace the fact about that. So that to me shows me about how smart you are. I mean, you and then I guess that's too from comedy. You are outspoken about how life really is. You don't try to sugarcoat it just to suit about, well, this disability is this way. We have to understand. No, you have to understand all of it. So I mean, I'm just taken aback to understand all that.
Yes, it was a true honor speaking with you today, and it was an absolute privilege, and thank you so much for speaking with us today, Maysoon.
I'm really proud of you all for doing this. I think this is really difficult to do, and I'm proud of you all for doing this. And Michael, you're right. The comedy gave me 2 different superpowers. One is to talk about really difficult things in a funny way so that people don't even know they're being lectured. Like they go home and they go, I need to be a better person. But like when I'm talking to them, they're just like laughing and having fun. But the second thing was it taught me how to deal with hecklers. So when you're a stand-up comic, there's usually a drunker person in the back of the room and they're like, you're not funny. And learning how to deal with hecklers taught me how to deal with bullies. And that's what allows me to be outspoken, because I don't care what anybody thinks about me. But let me rephrase that. I don't care what bullies and trolls think about me. However, if someone comes up to me at the end of the show and says, hey, you know that joke that you did? That really triggered a horrible, dark moment in my life. And I'd like you to think about that before you joke the next time. That I will listen to. So I think it's really important for people to understand what criticism to listen to and what to brush off. And what being a comic taught me how to do was people can call me every name in the book. They can mock how I look. They can mock my cerebral palsy. And I'm the one that's always laughing because I just don't let strangers define me. I don't let them tear me down. I spent 2 decades building this empire, and I'm not going to let some silly dude covered in cheese doodle dust stop me from pursuing my dreams because he thinks my mouth is crooked like Gumby. And so that was the best thing that comedy taught me, was how to brush off a bully.
Good. And that's very good. And thank you so much, Maysoon. Like I said, it was a privilege talking with you today. And we will see you guys back again with our next episode of Community Heroes Table Talk.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You are watching Community Heroes. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to Community Heroes on social media and on YouTube.